Before desire rules kingdoms, it conquers the heart, and the man who cannot govern what he wants will never truly govern anything else. I have seen strong men fall not because they lacked power, but because they trusted their hunger. Desire is a good servant, but a merciless master. When it sits on the throne, wisdom is silenced and discipline is mocked. Listen closely. Desire always promises life, but demands control in return. It does not rush you into ruin. It walks you there, slowly, with pleasure in its hand. And many follow willingly, not knowing the cost, until the price is already taken. There is no man without desire. The difference between the wise and the foolish is not what they want, but who commands it. For desire untamed does not fade. It grows. What satisfies today will enslave tomorrow. I watched men feed small cravings and swear they were harmless, but desire is never satisfied by permission. It is sharpened by it. Each indulgence teaches it to ask for more, and each delay in restraint makes resistance weaker. Do not deceive yourself. The heart does not remain neutral. If you do not train it, it will train you, and it will train you toward what is easiest, not what is right. Desire speaks fluently. It argues convincingly. It knows your weaknesses better than your enemies do. It waits for fatigue, for loneliness, for success, and then it strikes. The unguarded man believes he is in control because nothing has gone wrong yet. But collapse is always preceded by confidence without restraint. I tell you this. Mastery is never lost in one moment. It is surrendered in small agreements, small compromises that feel reasonable at the time. A glance that lingers, a thought left unchecked, a comfort chosen over discipline. Desire does not ask you to abandon wisdom outright. It asks you to postpone it. I have seen men who ruled cities, yet could not rule their nights. Men whose words carried weight in public, but whose private habits hollowed them out. Power in the hands cannot compensate for chaos in the soul. The greatest illusion is this, that desire will calm itself if left alone. But desire is fire. Neglect does not extinguish it. It spreads it. The disciplined man does not kill desire. He directs it. He binds it to purpose, like a strong horse harnessed to a chariot. Unharnessed, the same strength becomes destruction. Many confuse suppression with mastery. They bury desire without understanding it, and it returns stronger, twisted, and angry. True mastery is not denial. It is authority. Authority is built when a man learns to say no to himself without hatred, and yes, without weakness. When he chooses what is right, even when what is tempting is near. Desire always seeks immediacy. Wisdom always speaks of consequence. One shouts, the other waits to be heard. If you do not slow your soul, desire will hurry it into decisions you will spend years explaining. I have watched desire turn blessings into burdens, wealth into greed, love into possession, rest into escape. What begins as enjoyment becomes identity. And when desire becomes identity, it cannot be questioned without pain. Hear this now, while you are strong. A man mastered by desire will eventually resent what he once pursued. For desire never thanks you, it only consumes. The wise man interrogates his wants. He asks, "Why do I want this?" before asking, "Can I have it?" For not everything permissible is profitable, and not everything pleasant is safe. Desire promises satisfaction, but only discipline delivers peace. This is the first truth you must understand and carry forward. If you do not master desire early, it will master you quietly, until one day you wake up obeying impulses you once believed you controlled. Now go deeper, for desire does not only seek pleasure, it seeks rule. It wants to decide your pace, your priorities, and eventually your principles. And the man who hands it the smallest authority will soon find it rewriting the law. Desire is patient. It does not demand everything at once. It studies you. It learns when you are weakest, after victory, after loss, in moments of boredom and moments of praise. Then it speaks in a voice that sounds like your own. Many believe temptation is strongest in hardship. They are wrong. It is strongest in comfort, when vigilance sleeps and gratitude fades. I have seen men guard themselves fiercely in public, yet abandon themselves in private. They thought secrecy was safety, but what is practiced in secret always trains the heart for daylight. Desire thrives where boundaries are unclear, where rules are flexible, where a man negotiates instead of decides. The disciplined man makes decisions before desire speaks. The undisciplined man debates while desire is already seated at the table. Hear this: every desire you obey teaches the next one how to command you. Obedience trains appetite. Restraint trains authority. Desire does not ask whether something is true or right. It asks only whether it feels good now. Wisdom, however, is concerned with what remains after the feeling passes. The tragedy is this: most men do not lose themselves to great evils, but to small indulgences repeated without resistance. What feels insignificant today becomes indispensable tomorrow. I watched men say, "I can stop any time," not knowing that the need to say it was proof they already could not. True freedom does not announce itself. It acts. Desire also reshapes memory. It magnifies pleasure and minimizes pain. It edits the past to justify the present. A man ruled by desire remembers the thrill, not the aftermath. The wise man remembers the cost. Do not believe the lie that desire fades if satisfied. It multiplies. Satisfaction is not its end. It is its investment. This is why unchecked desire grows restless. What once excited becomes dull. So it demands more intensity, more risk, more sacrifice. And slowly, without noticing, a man begins to trade what is meaningful for what is stimulating. Desire is not evil by nature, but it is blind. Left ungoverned, it will run a man straight into ruin with enthusiasm. The man who masters desire understands delay. He can sit with discomfort without obeying it. He knows that wanting is not a command. It is a signal to examine, a signal to choose, not a signal to act. I have seen men chase desire their entire lives, only to arrive empty-handed. They reached what they wanted and found it could not carry the weight they placed upon it. No desire can give you identity. No pleasure can give you purpose. These must be built, not consumed. Another danger. Desire resents limits. It calls restraint oppression. It labels discipline as fear. But limits do not imprison strength. They focus it. A river without banks becomes a flood and destroys the land it was meant to nourish. So it is with desire. The man who sets boundaries early does not feel deprived later. The man who avoids boundaries early feels trapped later. Understand this deeply. Every desire you do not govern will eventually govern you. Not loudly, not violently, but persistently. It will decide what you avoid, what you pursue, and what you justify. And one day, you will look back and realize your life was shaped less by your values and more by your appetites. This is the second truth you must hold firmly. Desire does not need your permission to grow. It only needs your silence. Now consider the battle you do not see, for the greatest war with desire is fought in the unseen places of the mind. Long before the hands move, the heart has already agreed. Desire begins as a suggestion, not a demand. A thought passes through the mind, and the man who does not examine it invites it to stay. What is entertained soon feels familiar, and what feels familiar soon feels justified. I have watched men lose authority over their lives because they lost authority over their thoughts. They allowed desire to rehearse freely, and rehearsal became readiness. Understand this. You do not fall into action. You descend into it by permission. Every unchecked thought is a small opening, and desire is skilled at widening cracks. The disciplined man guards his inner world fiercely. He knows that what he allows himself to imagine will eventually ask to be expressed. The undisciplined man calls this harmless until harm arrives. Desire is strengthened by repetition, even without action. A craving rehearsed in the mind grows bold. A fantasy revisited becomes a plan waiting for opportunity. Do not underestimate the power of private agreement. What you agree with internally will one day demand obedience externally. Many believe mastery begins at the moment of temptation, but by then the ground is already softened. True mastery begins earlier, at the first whisper. The man who delays decision until desire is loud will almost always lose. The man who decides in advance moves without debate. This is why discipline must be settled, not negotiated daily. Principles argued every time will eventually be overturned. I have seen desire use intelligence as a weapon. It does not only tempt the foolish, it persuades the clever. It builds elegant arguments, moral exceptions, clever loopholes. The more intelligent the man, the more sophisticated the temptation. For desire adapts to the mind, it seeks to rule. Another truth: desire hates emptiness. When purpose is unclear, desire fills the space. When direction is absent, appetite provides momentum. This is why idle minds are easy targets. A man without structure becomes a playground for impulse. The disciplined fill their days with meaning before desire can fill them with distraction. They do not wait to be tempted. They stay engaged. Desire also feeds on emotion. Anger, loneliness, celebration, boredom, each becomes an opening. The man who does not know his emotional patterns will be ruled by them. Wisdom studies itself. It knows its weak hours. It plans for them. I have seen men fall not at their lowest, but at their highest. Success loosens caution. Praise dulls vigilance, and desire enters dressed as reward. The man who masters desire remains sober in victory. He knows that triumph does not cancel discipline. It demands more of it. Another deception. Desire convinces a man that resistance is loss, but resistance is training. Each refusal strengthens authority. Each delayed gratification builds command. Mastery is not built in grand victories, but in repeated small refusals. The world never sees them, but they shape everything. Desire grows frustrated when denied. It becomes noisy, but if endured, it weakens. Like a child denied candy, it protests loudly at first, then quiets when it learns refusal is firm. The man who gives in for the sake of silence teaches desire to scream louder next time. I tell you plainly, desire tests boundaries to see if they are real. If they bend, it pushes. If they hold, it retreats. And over time, desire learns its place. The greatest freedom is not the absence of desire, but the presence of authority over it. A man who commands his desires walks lighter, clearer, and unafraid. This is the third truth, and it is severe but saving. You do not master desire by fighting it occasionally. You master it by ruling it daily, especially when no one is watching. Now listen to what mastery truly demands, for many admire discipline, but few understand its cost. To rule desire, a man must accept tension without relief. He must learn to feel the pull and not obey it. Desire promises release. Discipline promises strength. One offers comfort now, the other offers freedom later. I have seen men confuse intensity with authenticity. They believe that what they feel strongly must be true. But feeling is not truth, it is weather. And no wise man builds his life according to the weather. The man who masters desire does not silence it by force. He outgrows it by order. He gives his life structure so desire has less room to wander. Order is not restriction. It is alignment. When purpose is clear, desire loses its authority to interrupt. This is why men with no clear aim are ruled by impulse. Desire becomes their direction. Pleasure becomes their compass. But the disciplined man chooses his direction first. Then he allows desire only where it serves that path. Another truth few accept. Desire weakens when the body and mind are trained. A man who is physically idle and mentally scattered is easily ruled, but discipline sharpens awareness. The body that is trained learns patience. The mind that is focused learns restraint. Together, they form a wall desire struggles to climb. I have watched men treat discipline as punishment. They resist it, resent it, and escape it whenever possible. But discipline is not punishment. It is protection. It protects the future from the moods of the present. Desire speaks most convincingly when a man is tired. Fatigue lowers resistance. This is why discipline is built in strength, not in exhaustion. The wise man structures his life so that temptation finds him prepared. The foolish hope to be strong in the moment. Hope is not a strategy. Another deception. Desire convinces a man that restraint will make him less alive, yeah? But uncontrolled desire dulls joy. It turns pleasure into noise. True joy requires contrast. Without restraint, nothing tastes sweet for long. The disciplined man enjoys fully because he does not consume blindly. He is present. He is awake. He chooses. Desire also hates patience. It calls waiting weakness, but waiting is the proof of control. A man who can wait owns himself. A man who cannot wait is already owned. I have seen men destroy trust, families, reputations, not because they wanted evil, but because they refused to wait. They reached early and paid late. Mastery of desire also demands honesty. A man must name his appetites without pretending they are virtues. Desire grows stronger when disguised as principle. Call hunger, hunger. Call temptation, temptation. Do not decorate it. Light weakens desire. Clarity robs it of mystery. The disciplined man does not flirt with the edge. He respects distance. He knows that proximity breeds agreement. Many fall not because they are weak, but because they stayed too close too long. Distance is not fear. It is wisdom. I tell you this with certainty. Desire does not respect intelligence, experience, or status. It respects only authority, and authority is not claimed in words. It is proven in action. Every day a man either reinforces his rule or erodes it. There is no neutral ground. This is the fourth truth, demanding but freeing. Mastery of desire is not achieved once. It is maintained daily through structure, restraint, and a clear refusal to let appetite decide the shape of your life. Now stay with me, because this is where most men fail. Not loudly, but gradually. The greatest danger of desire is not that it overwhelms you, but that it convinces you it is reasonable. By the time a man realizes he has lost control, control has already left the room. Desire does not overthrow a man in rebellion. It replaces him through delegation. He thinks he is still choosing, but his choices have become predictable. He no longer asks, "Is this right?" He asks, "How bad can this really be?" This is how desire reshapes conscience, not by erasing it, but by dulling it. The alarm still exists, but it rings softer each time it is ignored. I have seen men swear they would never cross a certain line. Years later, they could not remember why that line ever mattered. Not because truth changed, but because repetition numbed resistance. Desire is strengthened by familiarity. What once shocked now feels ordinary. What once required justification now feels deserved. This is why mastery must be aggressive early, because what you tolerate today, you will normalize tomorrow. Another truth few want to hear. Desire grows strongest when a man avoids responsibility. Responsibility anchors the soul. It gives weight to decisions. When a man carries nothing, he is easily carried by impulse. Idle freedom is the most dangerous freedom of all. With no structure, desire becomes entertainment. With no accountability, indulgence feels harmless. But desire does not need to be harmful to be destructive. It only needs to be dominant. A man mastered by desire loses his edge. He becomes reactive instead of deliberate. He lives by mood instead of mission. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, his life begins to orbit around avoidance, avoiding discomfort, avoiding boredom, avoiding effort, avoiding truth. Desire hates boredom because boredom invites reflection, and reflection threatens exposure. This is why distraction is one of desire's favorite tools. Noise keeps authority asleep. The disciplined man learns to sit in silence without escaping. He allows discomfort to speak without obeying it. This alone terrifies desire. Another hidden cost of desire's rule is fragmentation. A man becomes divided. He wants one thing publicly and another privately. This division drains strength. Integrity is not moral decoration. It is efficiency of the soul. When a man is whole, he is strong. When he is divided, desire pulls him apart from the inside. Many men are not weak. They are split. Desire thrives in secrecy, not because secrecy is powerful, but because honesty is dangerous to it. Once spoken plainly, desire loses some of its grip. This is why the disciplined man names his temptations early. He does not romanticize them. He does not exaggerate them. He simply exposes them. Exposure reduces power. I have seen desire collapse when brought into the light of clear decision, not discussion, not delay. Decision. Desire hates finality. It prefers maybe, later, just this once. The disciplined man is not cruel to himself, but he is clear, and clarity is terrifying to appetite. There is also this: desire always overpromises and underdelivers. It promises relief, but leaves residue. It promises escape, but creates dependence. It promises satisfaction, but shortens attention. After indulgence, the hunger returns, often stronger and less patient. The man who understands this stops believing desire's predictions. He no longer asks desire what will make him happy. He asks wisdom what will make him stable. Stability does not feel exciting, but it holds when excitement collapses. Mastery of desire reshapes time. The disciplined man is future-aware. He feels tomorrow pulling on today. The man ruled by desire is trapped in the present. He lives moment to moment, decision to decision, without direction, and calls this freedom. But freedom without direction is drift, and drift always ends somewhere unintended. I tell you this without softness. Desire does not care about your future self. It only cares about being fed now. So mastery requires loyalty to the man you are becoming, not the appetite you are feeling. The strongest men I have known were not without desire. They were full of it, but they refused to let it vote. They decided once and then enforced that decision daily. This is the fifth truth, and it separates men permanently. You do not master desire by understanding it alone. You master it by building a life so ordered, so intentional, and so anchored in purpose that desire is no longer strong enough to overthrow it. And when desire realizes it cannot rule you, it does something rare. It serves. Good, then we continue where the ground is already firm. Now understand what happens after desire realizes it cannot rule you. It does not disappear. It adapts. Desire, once denied the throne, attempts negotiation. It offers compromise instead of control. It says, not everything, just this. And many who stood strong against conquest fall to treaty. This is why mastery must mature. Early discipline is forceful. Later discipline must be wise. A man who has learned to restrain desire must now learn to direct it, or it will look for hidden exits. Unchanneled desire does not remain idle. It seeks expression. If it cannot command, it will attempt to leak. The disciplined man does not merely suppress appetite. He assigns it purpose. Desire contains enormous energy. When ruled, it becomes drive. When aligned, it becomes focus. When purified, it becomes devotion. I have seen men defeat temptation only to grow empty afterward. They removed indulgence, but built nothing in its place. And emptiness is dangerous ground. Desire hates emptiness. If purpose does not fill it, temptation will return, disguised as relief. This is why mastery is incomplete without mission. A man without direction will eventually negotiate with desire again, not because he is weak, but because he is unoccupied. The disciplined man fills his days intentionally. He chooses hard things worth pursuing so that lesser things lose their appeal. Meaning starves impulse. Another truth. Desire grows quieter, not weaker, in disciplined lives. Its silence is not surrender. It is assessment. It watches consistency. It waits for fatigue. It tests after long obedience. This is why pride is dangerous to mastery. The moment a man believes he has won, vigilance decays. Desire does not attack head-on when discipline is strong. It waits for success, praise, and relief. Victory creates vulnerability. I have seen men conquer old appetites only to be conquered by new ones. Not lust, but admiration. Not pleasure, but comfort. Not indulgence, but entitlement. Desire evolves with the man. So mastery must deepen. The disciplined man audits his desires regularly. He does not only ask, "Is this wrong?" He asks, "Is this necessary? Is this sharpening me or softening me?" Not all desires are sinful. Many are simply weakening. Comfort, when unchecked, becomes decay. Ease, when constant, becomes erosion. The man who masters desire learns to choose resistance, even when permission exists. Just because you may does not mean you should. Another mark of true mastery is patience with slow reward. Desire demands immediacy. Purpose tolerates delay. The disciplined man invests where returns are distant, but certain. The undisciplined chase what pays quickly and drains later. This patience reshapes identity. A man stops seeing himself as a consumer of moments and begins seeing himself as a builder of outcomes. Builders do not obey cravings. They obey vision. There is also this. Mastery of desire produces clarity others can feel. Such a man speaks differently. He listens fully. He is not rushed. His presence carries weight because he is not being pulled internally. Desire scatters attention. Discipline gathers it. This is why disciplined men intimidate temptation without effort. Desire senses authority. I tell you something rarely spoken. The man who masters desire becomes trustworthy to others and to himself. He knows his yes has weight. He knows his no will hold. And that is power. This is the sixth truth, heavier than the rest. Mastery of desire is not proven by how fiercely you resist in moments of temptation, but by how deliberately you build a life where temptation has less room to speak. We will go further. Now we arrive at what separates temporary discipline from lasting mastery. Most men can resist desire for a season. Few can remain sovereign when resistance becomes boring. Because the greatest threat to mastery is not temptation. It is familiarity. When discipline becomes routine, vigilance weakens, and desire does not need passion to return. It only needs neglect. I have seen men build strong walls, only to stop maintaining them. They trusted yesterday's obedience to protect today's choices, but authority that is not renewed quietly erodes. Desire watches for this moment. It waits until discipline feels automatic, until effort feels proven, until a man begins to believe his restraint is permanent. Then desire changes its voice. It no longer says, "Take this." It says, "You've earned this." This is one of its most dangerous forms. Reward is not indulgence, but indulgence often disguises itself as reward. And many men fall not because they wanted pleasure, but because they believed they deserved it. Desire loves entitlement. The disciplined man must learn the difference between rest and surrender, between restoration and escape, between enjoyment and compensation. Not everything that feels earned is safe. Another truth grows heavier here. The more disciplined a man becomes, the more subtle desire must be to reach him. Crude temptations fail, so refined ones arrive. Desire begins to appeal to identity, to status, to image. It whispers, "This is who you are now. This is beneath you. This is expected of you." And slowly, desire stops attacking weakness and starts exploiting pride. I have seen men who could resist hunger but not admiration. Men who conquered lust but surrendered to comfort. Men who rejected excess but embraced indulgence dressed as refinement. Desire matures as the man matures. So mastery must evolve from resistance into discernment. The disciplined man learns to examine not only what he wants, but why he wants it now. Timing reveals motive. Urgency exposes appetite. Desire always rushes. Wisdom allows space. This is why silence is such a powerful weapon. In silence, desire has nothing to lean on. No noise, no distraction, only truth. Most men fear silence because silence removes negotiation, and desire cannot survive without dialogue. Another danger at this stage is isolation. Not physical isolation, but internal isolation. A man begins to carry his discipline alone, unseen, unshared. And unseen discipline, if not anchored, can harden into rigidity. Rigidity breeds resentment. Resentment invites rebellion. This is how men who were once disciplined collapse dramatically. Not suddenly, but inwardly, long before anyone notices. The wise man builds rhythms of renewal. He does not only restrain desire, he restores the soul. He replenishes meaning, so discipline does not become bitterness. For bitterness is a doorway desire loves to enter. I tell you plainly, a disciplined life without joy becomes brittle, and brittle things shatter under pressure. True mastery is balanced, firm but alive, ordered but warm. The man who masters desire learns to celebrate without losing control, to enjoy without attaching identity, to rest without disappearing. This is a higher skill than refusal. It requires presence. Desire feeds on absence, absence of awareness, absence of intention, absence of self-command. Presence starves it. At this stage, mastery becomes less about fighting urges and more about choosing alignment again and again. The man asks, does this strengthen the life I am building, or distract from it? Not once, but daily, and slowly, something changes. Desire stops feeling like an enemy. It becomes raw material. Energy once spent resisting is now spent creating. Focus replaces tension. Authority replaces struggle. But hear this final warning of this part. The higher the level of mastery, the quieter the fall if vigilance is lost. There are no alarms at this height, only drift. So the disciplined man remains humble. He does not assume permanence. He renews decision daily. This is the seventh truth, earned, not learned. Mastery of desire is not a state you reach. It is a posture you maintain. And the moment you relax that posture, desire remembers where the throne once stood. Then we move into the final layer of mastery, where desire no longer feels dangerous, but subtle. This is where many strong men fall, not because they are weak, but because they mistake calm for control. At this stage, desire no longer shouts. It waits. It hides inside reasonable choices, respectable habits, and acceptable comforts. It no longer asks for permission to destroy. It asks for permission to soften. And softening, over time, undoes what force could not. The man who has ruled desire for long enough begins to crave ease, not pleasure, ease. He wants fewer edges, fewer tensions, fewer demands. He tells himself this is maturity. But ease is not maturity. It is relief without renewal. Desire loves this phase because it requires no rebellion, only quiet lowering of standards. The disciplined man must now guard not against temptation, but against drift. Drift is dangerous because it feels natural. There is no decision, no crisis, no moment to resist, only small relaxations that feel earned. I have seen men stop sharpening their minds because they were once sharp, stop guarding their habits because they were once disciplined, stop choosing intentionally because they once chose well. And desire stepped in, not to take over, but to manage. This is where mastery becomes memory-based instead of decision-based. A man begins to live on who he used to be, but authority that lives in the past cannot command the present. Desire respects only what is current. Another truth at this height: the man who has mastered desire must now master comfort, because comfort is desire wearing clean clothes. Comfort says, You've done enough. You don't need to push anymore. Stability is more important than growth, and comfort is not wrong, but it is dangerous when unquestioned. The disciplined man learns to audit comfort the way he once audited temptation. He asks whether ease is restoring him or sedating him. Sedation is the enemy here. A sedated life still functions, but it does not advance. It maintains. And maintenance slowly replaces purpose. Desire thrives in maintenance. Another cost of long-term mastery is loneliness. Not because others leave, but because fewer understand the choices being made. The man who lives intentionally begins to stand apart, not above, but apart. And desire uses this separation to whisper, "Why carry this weight alone? Why not be normal? Why not relax into the crowd?" Belonging becomes the temptation. This is why mastery must be anchored in conviction, not comparison. The moment a man measures his discipline against others, desire regains leverage. The disciplined man answers to principle, not popularity. There is also grief at this stage, a quiet one. Grief for the lives he did not choose, the indulgences he never explored, the roads left untouched. If this grief is not acknowledged, desire will romanticize those roads. It will paint alternate lives in warm colors and erase the costs. Wisdom looks fully, never selectively. The man who masters desire learns to grieve without longing, to acknowledge loss without reopening doors. This is a high skill. Another danger here is rigidity. When a man clings to discipline as identity instead of tool, when he becomes defined by what he refuses rather than what he builds, rigidity invites rebellion from within. True mastery remains flexible without becoming permissive, strong without becoming brittle. The disciplined man remembers why restraint exists, not to shrink life, but to focus it. At this stage, desire no longer needs to be fought daily. It needs to be reoriented regularly. The man revisits his mission. He renews his vision. He realigns his habits with where he is going now, not where he started. Because desire always targets the gap between present structure and future purpose. Close that gap, and desire loses relevance. This is the eighth truth, and it is subtle enough to miss. The greatest threat to a man who has mastered desire is not temptation returning. It is meaning fading. And when meaning fades, desire volunteers to replace it. So the man who remains free does not merely restrain appetite. He continually rekindles purpose. That is how mastery endures. Now we speak to the final transformation, where mastery stops feeling like effort and becomes character. This is not the end of struggle, but it is the end of confusion. At this stage, desire no longer defines itself as an enemy or a threat. It becomes information, a signal, not a command. The man feels want, but it no longer moves him without consent. This is rare. Most men either obey desire or exhaust themselves fighting it. Few arrive at authority so settled that desire loses urgency. This does not happen by accident. It is the result of years of alignment, values lived daily, habits chosen deliberately, and decisions enforced even when unseen. Here, discipline is no longer loud. There is no internal shouting, no constant negotiation. The man knows who he is, Identity has replaced impulse. This is why desire grows weaker when identity grows clearer. When a man is certain of his direction, appetite loses its argument. Desire thrives on uncertainty. Purpose starves it. But do not mistake this calm for immunity. Calm is not invincibility. At this height, the danger is not falling forward, but stepping sideways. Not abandoning principles, but adjusting them slightly. I have seen men who would never betray their values slowly redefine them, not in crisis, but in conversation, not under pressure, but under reflection. They told themselves they were evolving. But evolution that weakens structure is decay wearing a thoughtful face. The man who remains free keeps his foundations fixed, even as methods adapt. Another truth here: the disciplined man becomes influential, whether he seeks it or not. Authority over self radiates outward. Others notice. Some are drawn. Some are irritated. Some are threatened, and desire now appears in a new form. The desire to be admired, to be affirmed, to be followed. Power, attention, and validation become the new temptations. Many who defeated appetite lose themselves to applause. The man who masters desire must now master ego. Ego is desire seeking identity instead of pleasure. This is why humility is not optional at this stage. It is armor. The disciplined man remembers that mastery was built quietly, so it must be maintained quietly. He resists the urge to perform his restraint. He does not advertise his discipline. He lets results speak. Another cost of long mastery is fatigue, not physical, existential. A man may wonder if the vigilance is worth it, if the path he chose truly leads somewhere meaningful. This is not weakness, it is the mind asking for renewal. Here, desire may whisper nostalgia. It may romanticize earlier indulgence as freedom. But the wise man compares outcomes, not feelings. He remembers the chaos he escaped, the clarity he gained, the life he built. Memory, when honest, protects mastery. At this stage, the man understands something critical. Freedom is not the absence of desire. It is the absence of confusion about who is in charge. He no longer asks, "What do I want right now?" He asks, "Who am I becoming through this choice?" And that question governs everything. This is the ninth truth, and it is quiet but unbreakable. When desire no longer defines your identity, it loses the power to redefine your life. From here, mastery is not heroic. It is simply who you are. Now we speak of the end of the struggle as most men understand it, and the beginning of something far rarer: self-rule that endures. At the highest level, desire no longer feels like pressure. It feels like distance, not absence, but separation. The man who has mastered desire does not feel empty. He feels ordered. Order is misunderstood. Many believe order kills passion, but disorder kills meaning. When desire once ruled, it scattered the soul, pulling it in many directions at once. Now, desire exists within borders, and borders create depth. This is the paradox few grasp. Limitation does not shrink life, it concentrates it. At this stage, the man no longer asks himself daily whether he should resist. Resistance has already been decided. Authority has already been assigned. Desire does not argue with settled authority. This is why early mastery feels exhausting and later mastery feels quiet. Not because desire vanished, but because decision hardened into identity. The man no longer tries to be disciplined. He is disciplined. Trying is effort without structure. Being is structure carrying effort. But this peace comes with responsibility heavier than temptation ever was. Because now, the man cannot blame impulse. He cannot blame weakness. He cannot blame confusion. He knows when he chooses poorly. It is a true choice, and this honesty is costly. At this height, self-deception is almost impossible. The man sees himself clearly, and clarity removes excuses. This is why many never reach this place. They prefer the chaos of appetite to the accountability of sovereignty. To rule oneself fully is to stand naked before one's own conscience, and yet, this is where freedom finally becomes real. Not freedom to indulge, freedom to build. Desire once dictated reactions. Now it supplies energy. Energy, when ruled, becomes creation. The man who has mastered desire begins to experience a different hunger, not for pleasure, but for alignment. Not for stimulation, but for coherence. He feels discomfort when life drifts out of order. He senses when actions no longer match values, and he corrects course early, quietly, without drama. This is mastery. No theatrics, no collapse, no recovery arc, just course correction. The man now understands something vital. Life is not destroyed by one great fall, but by thousands of small abdications. So he abdicates nothing. He does not surrender mornings. He does not surrender standards. He does not surrender inner language. Even his thoughts are governed, not harshly, but deliberately, because he knows what is tolerated internally eventually manifests externally. Another truth emerges here, heavier than the rest. The man who masters desire becomes responsible for more than himself. Others begin to depend on his consistency. His presence stabilizes rooms. His decisions create safety. Whether he seeks leadership or not, leadership finds him, and desire returns one final time, not as appetite, not as comfort, not as ego, but as escape. Escape from responsibility. Desire whispers, "You have done enough. You carry too much. Why not let go?" This is the last temptation. To step down from sovereignty, to shrink back into self-focus, to trade influence for ease. And this is where the man must choose not just discipline, but service, because self-mastery that does not extend outward eventually collapses inward. The man who remains free accepts the burden of impact. He allows his restraint to benefit others, his clarity to guide, his steadiness to anchor, not loudly, not forcefully, but reliably. Desire hates reliability, because reliability cannot be rushed, seduced, or manipulated. At this stage, the man no longer measures success by how little he indulges, but by how much life he can carry without breaking alignment. He can enjoy without attachment, rest without disappearance, possess without being possessed. This is sovereignty. And now comes the final understanding, the one that reframes everything before it. Desire was never the enemy. It was the test of whether a man would be ruled from within or from without, whether he would build structure or surrender to sensation, whether he would choose authorship over appetite. The man who passes this test does not become perfect. He becomes integrated. His wants no longer fight his values. His actions no longer betray his future. His inner life no longer contradicts his outer one. This integration produces a rare peace, not the peace of ease, but the peace of alignment. And alignment is power that does not announce itself. So let this be the final word, spoken without ornament. A man who masters desire does not live without hunger. He lives without confusion. He knows who he is. He knows where he is going, and nothing inside him is allowed to hijack that direction. This is not control for control's sake. This is freedom earned slowly, protected daily, and lost only if abandoned. And if you remember nothing else, remember this: desire will always knock, but only the undecided answer. The man who has mastered desire has already chosen, and therefore remains free.